We're going to ask our panelists to come up on stage, and I want to introduce our moderator of the panel, Lorrie Lykins. Lorrie's been with i4cp and our predecessor organization, HRI, for over a decade. She is our editor-in-chief on the research team, and she is the author of the She Suite newsletter that featured Robin recently. So if you have somebody you think that should be featured in that She Suite newsletter, she's the gal to talk to. So Lorrie, I'll have you come up and take control of the panel.
Is Robin back?
Yes, I saw her walking.
So let's have Robin and Soheila and Alexis come on up. So how much time do we have, Eric? We have till 5:30. So we're gonna have this chair is so very Austin Powers. Okay.
It is very Austin Powers.
I feel like Dr. Evil. So we're gonna have some panel conversation, and then we wanna open it up for Q&A, because I know, based on what Robin's told me and from what I've read and heard, there's always a lot of questions. So just give us an idea of how many questions are out there right now, so we can kind of plan ahead. Raise your hand if you think you're gonna have a question in a bit. Okay, all right, great. So
sometimes the film takes a little while to digest. Questions come up.
Definitely. So Soheila, Alexis, and Robin, why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourselves, give us a little bit of information on your background. Soheila, a lot of MIT grads in this film, like you, engineer from Boeing. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Soheila Khosravani. I'm actually from Iran originally. And I came here right around the revolution. My family had to leave because of the situation in Iran. And I went to obtain my undergrad in engineering, electrical engineering, computer science. And I had so many electives in math, I ended up with another degree in mathematics. Then I was actually in graduate school when Boeing, and I was teaching computer science. And Boeing approached me as I was helping others to get jobs at Boeing. And they offered me to get on a new airplane program they were doing. So I joined Boeing without a resume or anything. They just interviewed me and wanted me to go up there to Seattle. And then after that, after a few years into that as an engineer and engineer manager, I ended up going to MIT for my another degree or two from electrical engineering for those from MIT course 2, and then course 15 from Sloan, my master's in engineering. And then after that, I also have another, I think, executive master's in leadership and all that. And I'm also the longest standing PhD student at University of Washington. So, but I joined Boeing, and it has been a playground, really. It's like being at different companies within the same industry. It just provides such an opportunity. I had the opportunity to run factories for all commercial wings, for example, on the commercial airplanes. I have been also involved with director of quality for all the engines for all the commercial airplanes, and director of technical customer support. So I really resonated when you go into a meeting and they just don't know who you are, especially if you're in the Middle East or Korea or maybe even in the US, and you're the top person they're gonna talk to. It's really neat to look at their faces. And right now, I'm actually, I have had 5 different careers at Boeing, I think, but right now I am responsible for global learning supply chain for Boeing Company. And it's an honor and privilege to be in aerospace and working in things that NASA works on, or things that, a satellite one day, enterprise level work that we do. It's really exciting, but we do have a big, big issue regarding engineers, women, people of color in the pipeline. Yep. So hopefully we get a chance to exchange some ideas.
Okay. Alexis Fink, Intel.
Man, I should have gone first. She's way cooler than I am. My name is Alexis Fink. I have a doctorate in industrial organizational psychology, so I deal with how do you use math to understand social systems, leadership, organizational change, et cetera. And that's what I've dedicated my career to. I've spent the last 3.5 years at Intel, where I run talent analytics. I was at Microsoft for about 8 years before that, and prior to that at places like BASF and NASA, and getting to do any place that'll let me do math to make a system better. So there you go.
I'm just a filmmaker.
But an honorary coder now, right?
Yeah.
So Alexis, I know last year Intel announced this huge investment in diversity in technology to the tune of $300 million. But Intel's been doing a lot even before that in terms of advancing diversity and technology. But can you tell us a little bit about what Intel's doing?
I can tell you a little bit. We're very proud of the fact that we've been actually doing things like releasing our numbers, as we saw in the film. We've been doing that for about a decade. And what's interesting is if you don't work really intentionally, you can have all the best intentions in the world and not actually make a ton of progress. So the announcement that Brian Krzanich made at CES a year and 4 months ago was, okay, we're kind of done with goodwill and with transparency. We actually really need to do some pretty significant system innovation. What I'm proud about for the technology industry is that we're not alone in doing this, and part of Brian's commitment is that we have to do this for the industry at large, right? So we're working with the Oakland schools, we're working with all kinds of, actually I won't monopolize time, but there's all kinds of ththings we're trying to do to influence the system, to get more folks to choose this career, just like you see with Microsoft and their 2 decades of investing in DigiGirls and the Girls Who Code and the Black Girls Who Code, et cetera. So really trying to drive this for an industry. And I've got some things I'll talk about tomorrow morning as well, but it's been really exciting to watch the change in energy as we said, you know what, this is actually going to be something that's now, you know, our executives are make or break graded on it. And it's really, it's not just goodwill and kindness now, it really is something that's front and center for the organization.
Right. So I guess the estimate is in 4 years, by 2020, we're going to have 1 million unfilled computer engineering jobs.
Yeah, it's actually, the White House, I think, is now saying, Megan, I was talking to her last week, that it's probably over that now.
Over 1 million.
It's going to be over 1 million jobs.
So
And I think what's interesting about that, and what Alexis was saying, was that it's not just a diversity issue for the sake of diversity. I mean, of course, that's important too. It's a social issue. But it's the fact that this is also a $4 billion issue to the United States. And it's interesting because people tend to look up from their iPhones when you talk about money. And the fact that this is a huge economic issue for the United States, but also obviously an important and social one. And to get people to realize that there's actually something that will improve your company. I mean, it's scientifically proven that it will improve your product, improve your company, that companies are smarter when they have diversity.
You know, that's one of the key things for me. People, their lead foot is generally that it'll be better for your products. You get better product development if you got people with different ideas. We saw that in the crash test dummy experiment, et cetera, in the film. But this is slightly heretical, so don't tell my boss. But the 2 things that I like best about this is that talent supply chain problem, where I just need bodies who are good at this, and they're hard to find. And if I project into the future, and I spend a lot of my time doing forecasting and labor market work, if I project into the future, we're looking at being able to actually source about half the amount of talent in some of these areas that exist. And it's not all, some of it's software you can do in 3 months, but some of it is 5, 10 years to really get to expertise. I've got to start plugging this gap now. And then the other piece is, at the end of the film, we got into some of the social justice, right? People being able to lift their companies out of poverty. And we have a great example in one of our senior-most executives, the person who runs our data center group, so makes like the best supercomputers in the world kind of thing, right, is a woman. And Diane Bryant was literally homeless her senior year of high school. And so when she was looking at trying to find something to do in community college, because God knows nobody was going to pay her to go to school, she honestly went to the counselor and said, what's going to pay me the most? That's the thing I want to do. And of course she's amazing at it. She was doing it for years, brilliant and fantastic. But the fact that this is the job that's going to pay you the most. This is the job that frankly is going to kind of also let you be a parent, because you don't have to be there like you do as a nurse. Right. You don't have to be there like you do as a school teacher. You can have flexible hours and come in late, and you can do a lot of things with this career in a way that's really powerful.
And I think it's really about, it's great that you talked about code and the tech environment. But really coding is needed in everything, frankly. Yeah. So one of the comments in the movie, but it's really zillion path, and it's so true. I mean, think about, we talk about medical path, right? And all the medical devices. Somebody has to code them. We talk about, in the past 10 years, we only have had 100 apps for medical healthcare. That's it, and no more, because they're not as sexy and exciting, maybe. But there's a real revolution that really you need to have it in every aspect. Whether it's a satellite that's going up, whether it's shuttle we are sending to the space or whatever, it just needs that, and it's elusive. People think about coding, just sitting there and really doing that. And I tell you, I probably didn't know enough Otherwise, I would have been caught in the culture. And the culture had not affected me. I didn't know. I was just telling during the movie that I did not own, and I never had a Barbie. It just never appealed to me, you know.
No
but
loss,
that's
no
not that
loss
it's
there.
bad or anything, but I think the point is, so I wasn't caught in the culture, but now I see more and more, and it's really elusive. I mean, they don't have an image of what an engineer looks like, what an engineer does. So I just want to digress for a minute that if you go to TED Talk, for example, there are a lot of young women engineers who actually have put stuff on the TED Talk because they see the gap. And what can they do as an individual? And there's one gal who's in civil engineering, and she has produced now a curriculum, so a call to action to this body, a curriculum for actually young kids, as young as grade school, that what is civil engineering? I mean, can you imagine if we as a professional group together, collaborate, and bring some of these together as a curricula, and maybe work with Sal Khan and put it on Khan Academy, and schools can use it every day. If you go to, and then you can add, purchase something and add, as a sponsor. If you go to Boeing, that's what it means. If you go to Intel, if you go to do pure coding for these high-tech companies, they're missing that. And I think when you think about what is this civil engineering, you build buildings? No, you design societies. You do design cities, and then that becomes exciting. So I think there's really huge image gap. Even if you think about, people know about supply chain, they know about design work, but when it comes about what actually it means to become part of it, it's a little elusive.
So what we have here is a cultural problem, right? It's a stereotype problem. I mean, you saw the girls at the beginning of the film. They really don't understand what a software engineer is, and they assume that you're going to be sitting in a basement at 3 a.m., drinking Red Bull and eating stale pizza or something alone. And I think it's really important to change that image and change that stereotype. I won't go into it here, but I think Hollywood needs to help with that. Because the minute CSI, what was it? Within 2 years of CSI coming out, there was a 75% increase in the number of women that wanted to study forensics. So when you think about that, that's just an incredible, the amount of influence that our media, television, films have on our kids is enormous, and we need to spark into that.
Absolutely. Soheila, Boeing is always top of the list of the employer of choice for women in STEM. So what is it that Boeing is doing? What are you doing right?
We are actually involved a lot, as it was in the movie and Robin mentioned. It really starts very early, so we are heavily invested in the K through 12, in all the communities that we exist around the world. In addition to that, we truly partner with the colleges, a lot of scholarship, internships, and so on and so forth. So a lot of investment, and also with our diversity and inclusion, some of the programs we have, and in addition to that, we have employee resource groups that are heavily. I was a champion, executive champion for the Women in Leadership. We started probably 20 years ago or 19 years ago. So there's a really huge impact, and then you see a lot of, you go to meetings or you go to problem solving, and it takes a team. So that is a given. It's just really a team environment and collaboration, and the importance of diversity. We see that better solutions, faster, better come into the play. So that, I think that has been a lot of focus regarding that, and truly, again, introducing the aerospace industry so that the kids and people understand where can you play, where can you come in, and that has been really, and we have done a lot, and yet we have to do a lot more.
So when you say K through 12, what exactly does that look like? How does Boeing interface with kindergartners?
So a lot of the, actually we have a lot of volunteers and a lot of structured programs that are people from engineers to executives. They actually go to the schools and actually spend time with the kids and do share with them, this is what aerospace is, this is, if you think about an engine, if you think about an airplane, this is how it works. So really get to that as part of sometimes science curriculum, and really encouraging the kids, no matter, boys, especially talking about women, people of color, all of them, we need all of them. If you look at the statistics and think about how many engineers the United States produces, you and I will be fighting. There aren't enough engineers. There aren't enough scientists. There aren't enough coders. There aren't enough people in computer science. It's just such a gap. And one of the girls said that this is the huge, cultural and huge problem it's an economic issue. It's not just social. It really is for all these companies to excel and move forward, no matter what kind of a strategic resource planning you do. So you're going to have part-time people, you're going to have overseas, you're going to have a global supply chain of people and talent, but still you need to have this base foundation that's not happening. And a lot of it starts in school. A lot of it starts in the school and getting people engaged with that. And one of the things that these people said was that how do you, the stereotype and the culture. And I think some of the issues that start in education, when you come to career at work, depending on what job you have, what boss you have, what work you're doing, they stay, and the culture of the company. So how do you prepare people for both educational side and the career side?
Yeah. So Robin, I know when you and I talked, and this is in the She Suite interview, it's on our website if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but one of the things you told me about why you decided to make this film is because of your daughter's experience. Do you mind sharing a little bit of that with us and maybe talk a little bit about this concept of ambient belonging?
Sure. So my daughter was studying computer science in college, and she was a sophomore, and she's always been a very academically competent kid and confident. She's a D1 athlete. And she began to call home saying, okay, Mom, this is really weird. There's only one other woman in the whole class. Everybody assumes I have to partner with her. I don't think I belong here. It's really weird. Everybody else knows so much more about it than I do. And these were entry-level prerequisite classes. And you know, at the same time, there were newspapers coming across our doorstep saying, hey, college grads, you want to get a job out of college? You better know something about computer science. And then the White House issued the report saying that there'd be 1 million unfilled computer science-related jobs in the year 2020. And I couldn't understand why the supply and demand was so vast and why we weren't doing more to try to keep our kids in school. And you know, especially the few women that were interested in computer science. But the most interesting thing to me was I asked my daughter, she goes, Mom, I'm failing. And I said, you are not failing, go talk to your professor. She said, Mom, this is college, nobody talks to their professors. But she did eventually go in, and he said, you're in the top third of the class. You're doing fine. And about 2 classes later, she goes in and talks to the professor again, and he's like, look, you got till Thursday to drop, so. And what happens in a lot of computer science classes, as you get up, is they use them sort of as weeding classes. Mm-hmm. And this is not unique to the school where she was. It's really happening all over the place, but it's almost a sense of sort of hazing a little bit. And there's a very interesting dilemma going on with the universities because we talk about increasing the pipeline. But in fact, the pipeline's full, right? It's filled with men and it's filled with foreigners. But the college and university pipelines are full, and they're not necessarily incentivized to increase the size of their department. They don't have the funds, they can't necessarily reallocate funds from, say, you know, history to computer science. So there's a little bit of an issue going on there. You know, how do we get women to go through? But that is eventually what made me look into the issue of it. My producer also has 3 daughters, so we were concerned about our daughters, but thought it was just a really interesting concept and problem that we have.
And it's interesting to me because the B word has come up several times the last 2 days, belonging, the sense of belonging.
Oh,
I remember you mentioning she just felt like she didn't belong, and this theory of ambient belonging, this sense of walking into an environment and really making a decision immediately whether or not you fit in that room. Yeah. Whether it's a room or a place or a group, whatever it is, there's something about it that makes you feel like you either belong there or you don't. So what is it that we can do, what can HR professionals do to help that ambient belonging factor improve so that women feel like they belong? You know,
the president of Harvey Mudd College told me a fascinating story about how she's increased diversity and actually the gender diversity so impressively at Harvey Mudd. And she tells me a story about how she went back to Washington, D.C. and was a consultant for a government company. And they said, look, we're really trying to get more women in here. We can't understand why. Will you come back and talk to us? She says, all right. So she goes back and she gets whatever it was, 34th floor, and she walks in. And they said, just have a seat here and wait. And on the wall, all around in the room, were these like World War II pictures and old machine guns and everything like that. And she says that she sat there and she's kind of looking around like this, thinking, you know, there was like a box of cigars and everything about that. I mean, that's ambient belonging. Everything about that tells her, not every woman, I'm not going to generalize like that, but certainly told her, whoa, this is a man's place. I'm not sure I'm fit in here. This is sort of a boys' club. And so I think that fascinating things that certain colleges have done, universities, Dan Garcia at UC Berkeley, changed the name of a class. So instead of calling it CS, for computer science, CS10, he changed it to The Joy and Beauty of Computing. Now, true story. But he also changed the curriculum. So rather than going in with sort of just this hardcore, quantitative lessons at the very beginning, it's like what Colleen Lewis says in the film, it's about the first homework assignment, right? So he then shows the really creative side of coding early on. It'd be like showing them how you can make animation in a film, like Danielle Feinberg does in the film. And so by simply doing that, and by giving them showing them sort of the breadth of what computer science can be, he was able to retain, he brought on so many more women and retain women. I think they're up to 40% in some of their classes now.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so how are we doing? Let's open this up for questions. Do we have mics that are being run? We have somebody right here in the front row.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to die.
Thanks.
Okay.
Justine?
Thank you. Great movie, fabulous. I'm a mom of a wonderful daughter as well, so I love the work you're doing.
Thank you.
An unintended consequence of more women in coding could result in lesser wages. When we look at the history of bankers, of teachers, as soon as women got into the workforce, sure enough, we did see a drop in wages. Has there been any studies with regard to that, and any advice you have for us as HR professionals to make sure that equal pay for equal work?
Well, did anybody see the report, what happened with Salesforce last week, I think it was? It was pretty impressive. Mark Benioff said, I challenge all companies to do this. He said, this is what I'm quoting him, he said it was really easy. I had them do a report, run it, make sure that people were there the same amount of years, the same qualifications, in the same job. It cost the company $3 million, but he got everyone up to the same level of pay. And there was a great article, I think it was Wall Street Journal maybe, but if not, it's definitely San Francisco Chronicle, that he just came out and he said, I challenge every company to do it. You can do it as simply as pushing a button. Just do the comparison, which I think is fabulous. I'm gonna let you answer because I know you could do it from Intel's point of view, but I just want to say a big problem with why women end up making more, say 10 years in, is because women don't ask for raises. This is the same rate that men do. Women don't believe that they're really owed it or that they deserve it. They have this sense of, well, it goes into a whole different sort of imposter syndrome deal. But the truth is that we need to encourage our daughters and our sisters and our mothers and everyone ourselves to ask for raises and to believe that we deserve them.
So I have one point on the pay parity and one point on the personal advocacy. The first is Salesforce.com invested $3 million to do it, but they are actually the anomaly of the people who've been creating their results lately or producing their results lately. GoDaddy showed they had no gap whatsoever. Amazon a week or two ago showed they had no gap whatsoever. We went in and showed that we had no gap whatsoever because we've been paying attention to this at a process level for many, many years. So when we went in and actually did the pay parity, it's like, oh, hot damn, would you look at this? And even among our senior most executives, I'm like, well, that tilts in a good way.
Yeah.
What do you know about that? Which we don't produce publicly, but there's some really, really good findings there. The point you made about women and advocacy is a really, really important one, though, and it actually happens at multiple points in the process. The first is in that initial salary offer, right? Because boys will come back and say, can you do better? And girls will say, thank you.
Yep.
And then the next is at that point of promotion. And I actually, like literally within the recently, I've got a skip level on my team. We wanted to put her in this management position. There's another kind of candidate. And the dude scheduled a one-on-one with me and like pitched himself. And the woman, I scheduled a one-on-one with her. I made her boss like prep her beforehand that she needed to, have this discussion. At minute 25 of our 30-minute one-on-one, we're supposed to be talking about this promotion and scope expansion for her. I finally say, look, I know you talked to Beth about this. Like, what are you thinking? She's like, well, she was just so busy telling me how much she loved her current job that she couldn't say, I know you're considering me for this promotion, this manager role, and I would like that. She couldn't say those words. And in a prior company, we did a really big study of the top And it was about the top 1,000 people, and all of them had a career dev plan that had been self-written. And the women almost universally said, I'm so grateful. I'm doing work that I never thought I would be able to do. This is amazing. I'm just lucky, which is great. Like, they're probably much more emotionally healthy people. And the men all said, you need to know, I expect this promotion in the next 6 months. If I don't get it, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna take that as a signal. So like, hurry up and give me more, like back up the cash truck to my house. And it was just stark, like profoundly stark. And I've never once had a guy that I've gone to within my own team or in my coaching practice where I said, look, I wanna talk to you about this scope expansion, what do you think? Who says, you know, I don't think so. And probably 70% of the women that I approach in a coaching perspective or even on my own team, they waffle like, oh God, you know, my job right now is really hard. I'm not sure if I can do it. You know, I just have kind of gotten this one mastered. And there's that thing about the men applying for jobs if they can do like 30% of the stuff and the women want like 100% of the stuff.
Yep.
So there's all these structural points.
Actually, I want to add, I think you guys did some research in She Suite, and part of it was that how women get promoted.
Yeah.
And it's really based on performance.
Yep.
So if I want to get promoted, I have to be 110%, maybe 120, I don't know, at least. And then men get promoted based on potential.
Yep.
And I think that's a really disparity that even brings in a lot of self-doubt. We were talking a number of women who just got promoted to vice president. And it was like, well, so how is it working? And they all were wondering, to the level of thinking, maybe I should say no, because I need to get ready, better ready for this. And again, the counterparts will never say that. It's like the opportunity has come, I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna figure it out, I'm gonna do it. So I think there's a disparity that that's cultural and it's kind of self-made.
And it starts young, and it's really hard.
It's
my daughter's a senior in college now. She got a job offer. She's moving back to San Francisco. And I said to her, let me see the contract before you agree. She's like, well, Mom, I mean, it is what it is. And I said, no,
it's not.
Saralee, you should. So we were, it was too much. I said to her, ask for 5,000 more. She goes, Mom, that's crazy. It's 5,000 more a year, it's not that much. Ask for it and ask for relocation expenses. And next thing I know, she texts me back, she says, Dad says I shouldn't do that.
Because girls are seen as bitchy.
I'm gonna hear about this later, by the way. But,
Definitely.
but I thought that was really amazing. And it's been bugging me so much. I swear I'm thinking about this at 3 in the morning. And I texted her again yesterday and I said, would you please at least ask for $1,000 travel expense? She goes, but Mom, I'm living in New York now, I'm in school in New York. I'm moving back to San Francisco, which is my hometown. I said, that doesn't matter. You're going back there to work for them.
Right.
Ask him for it. She goes, okay, I will. I better wait a day before I ask her if she has, but.
So your question was, what can we do in terms of HR? And there are some things we can do structurally. So for example, the thing about women not being willing to apply unless they have every criterion, and men, it's like, I got a couple of them, it's fine. Like, I read a book on that once, I'm good.
Dude, I got this nailed.
Exactly. So how can you structure your requisitions so that they don't have a laundry list of everything anybody ever thought might be kind of cool, which is intimidating and we know is off-putting to women? How can you put language in it that isn't the, are you the man, that we saw in the video, right? How can you do those kinds of things that are very simple? And then on the promotion point, I'm actually really proud that we did this in our last promotion cycle. Rather than letting people think about, oh, who is it? And who's been coming to me and saying, you know, I'm gonna quit if I don't get this promotion, which is gonna lean towards the dudes. How do you actually say, here's a slate of people who, by our criteria in terms of performance and years and the number of positions we know we need, here's a slate of people that you need to consider. And by the way, you need to justify why you did or did not promote every one of them. And make sure that there is just a queuing process. So it's not only the person who looks like me and the person who made a stink, but let me think about all the people who have the capability. Let me think about everyone, even the one who says, I'm just so grateful, I just love the job I'm doing right now. You know, I'm not sure if I can take that promotion. Let's not let them opt out in a way that's self-damaging.
And in addition to that, at Boeing, we do very similar,
Yeah.
ensuring that the panel is diverse as well.
That's right.
Exactly.
And at all levels, frankly. And in addition to that, I think having the development plans at all levels, and most importantly, for women, people of color, any minorities that are in there, truly, 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 what's important is the sponsorship and advocacy at whatever level you are, because that will give that mentorship relationship. And also, they talk about you in the rooms when you're not there, in the rooms that matter, right? And the circles that matter. So I think that those are the stuff that HR can actually put in place, that there are mentorship programs across the divisions, across the functions. So there's a lot HR can do. I think I came from engineering, right? And then equality and operations and a strategy to HR, and how powerful HR is, but I'm not sure that if we know how much power we have and how much it's being really used versus are we a business leader, are we a business partner versus we're here to really drive the business.
Right. Okay, next question.
I see a hand.
See a hand? Yes.
Hi, thank you for that nice presentation, as well as the film was really powerful. I'm curious how we might be able to get a copy of it, or how we could screen it in our organizations.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So the film is available to license right now. If you go on our website, which is codedocumentary.com, you can host a screening. You can do it with me, without me. There's difference in budget, obviously, but you could do that. And that's this version, which is the festival cut. There's also the educational version, which I mentioned before, which is less than an hour. It's really just more focused on how to inspire kids to get interested. It doesn't have anything new, but it has a lot of stuff taken out.
Great, thank you.
So, yeah.
So we have 5 minutes. Another question?
Thanks. I share everyone else's thoughts. Very inspiring, so thank you. I just wondered what your thoughts are on tackling the issue if you don't have as much of a burning platform. So if it's not really quite as obvious as it is here, but it's there, be it in just certain parts of the organization, certain people, certain levels.
So in other words, how to sort of tackle the unconscious bias? Yeah, I think that's really hard. I think the first thing that's important to admit is that we all have them, men and women. And that once we sort of address that, I think it becomes a little bit disarming, which is better to address the issues of it. Obviously, my way of going about it was through art, so that's why I made this film. I think that a lot of companies, it's a conversation starter anyway. But I think you need to find a male ally, because I really believe that this is not just a woman's problem, it's a man's problem too. And I think that we need to bring men into the conversation. Find male allies. I think that's probably one of the best things that we can do.
And then what we were just speaking about earlier, unconscious bias is a thing, and you can't goodwill your way out of it, but you can process your way out of it. For example, having a diverse, not only slate of interviewees, so, I'm considering this person, but a diverse panel of folks responding to them. The way you structure performance appraisals, the way you structure job postings, the way you structure your manager promotion processes, et cetera, so that you get out of that knee-jerk reaction, having clear criteria to evaluate instead of, oh gosh, I just don't think she was a fit. I got this better vibe from this dude. Yeah, because you both played football in high school.
Right.
Like, I get that's your vibe, you share that, but that has nothing to do with this job. How do you really make it much more clearly based on criteria?
Objective. Yeah.
And there's always a burning platform for excellence and doing better. So there are many studies you can bring in also that shows diversity by itself from all angles really adds to the bottom line of the company. You mentioned the female factor, for example, and then there's another one. There's studies that boards, the more diverse they are, the bottom line of the company and the stock value and the valuation of the company is higher. These are proven and at least tested out, hypotheses that are tested out. And then the whole investment of what is your brand? What does it stand for? People are here probably from Toyota, and in Toyota in Japan, in their communities, they start actually, when do you think they start kind of investing about their brands in the community? Just guess. When do they start? When the mothers are actually pregnant. Isn't that interesting? They're all over. So as you're growing up, you wanna work for Toyota. You have grown up. It was in your, at kindergarten when you went, it was there. Where at the ward, at the hospital, there were pictures of Toyota and the future. And so there's a lot of ways that, how do you want to engage the bigger community and the benefit of the diversity? It's really a bottom line results difference that it's a differentiator at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I do think that men typically respond to facts and figures, and so the report, The Female Factor, was a report that was published in the Harvard Business Review, June 2011, and it just states that regardless of the individual IQs of a group of men on a team, if you add one woman to that team, regardless of her IQ, the collective IQ rises.
Yeah.
And so teams actually get smarter the more women you bring to it. And this is not saying that a group of women is the way to go either. It's saying that it's collaborative and it's about the diversity together. But just saying, men tend to get smarter when women are around.
Interesting.
And one last thing about that, there is a study, I think that there's a lot of, my biggest concern in addition to what we talked about is really that early pipeline, even in the kids and stuff and how we start, because they don't know what they're arriving for, and our education system. Yeah. I think the fact that it should be required to have the computer science, to have that basics, because it's used in every field you're in advertising, journalism, history, whatever you can put your finger on, filmmaking,
right.
It's there, but I don't think we are requiring it. And just a couple months ago, I think it was a month ago when they did the education comparison with the US and the whole world, we were number 27 of 27. And we spend more per pupil dollars than any country in the world. So we are getting it wrong. And then we have our teachers. So there's a government aspect, there's an advocacy aspect for all these companies that can work, because our education system and how we bring things together are not really working well to get us really ready for that next stage.
We need to start in kindergarten. It's got to start that early.
And we're out of time. Thank you all so much.